You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. As always, thanks for making us your first listen with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you as you have finally made your return to God's country after a bit of an extended trip there in Fort Worth, where unfortunately it goes the wrong way for the Red Raiders. We'll spend a lot of time talking hoops today. We'll get to a bigger picture agenda item being discussed once again, it seems like, over the last couple of weeks, that meaning more hoops whenever March arrives. NCAA tournament expansion talk really seems to be gaining some steam, and we'll have sort of an expansion theme, I guess, over the next few days as we're going to get into the football conversation postseason wise on an upcoming episode also, Chris. So we'll visit that in just a moment, but we'll start there in Fort Worth with Tech and Texas Christian. Chris, it unfortunately goes south for the Red Raiders on the road as they're able to get one, obviously following the loss in Tucson, but doesn't go that way for them this time around. And credit the Frogs for what they were able to make happen. I think Tech had some problems on the glass, had some problems defensively. And then maybe some things, I'm curious to hear from you about this, maybe some things the Frogs did defensively to limit some offensive weapons for Grant McCaslin's guys. But either way, no rest for the weary. Got to bounce back as you come back to Lubbock. But unfortunately, we don't see the road run continue for Tech.
Yeah, and again, I think what this Texas Tech team has been able to do to this point has been just awesome. And I guess I kept, we maybe even have hinted at that on some of these shows with some of these games, but these games are all tricky, right? And I guess I was waiting at some point for you to potentially show up to one of these games and just not really have it. And I don't know if it was last week against Arizona State that I would say you just didn't have it, or was that just Arizona State just playing out of their mind? This game against TCU, there's some things that TCU did, but there's some of this that, you know, there was a lot of running. We ran out of gas commentary from Coach McCaslin last night. Just felt like he played some guys too many minutes. But like it's stuff like TCU has nothing to do with the fact that you just throw it out of bounds 3 or 4 times, and there's a lot of like looking at, dude, I thought you were going to be here, but you were there. It just some of that. You almost get a steal at the end of the game, and it just bounces right to a Horned Frog. I mean, just right to him. Like, okay, you know, it's just stuff like that. When you jump on a loose ball and they say, hey, he called timeout. I mean, there was just some things like that. This isn't TCU doing anything. This is just kind of one of these deals where, you know, and you had some fairly clean looks in the first half that in the last month or so, you've knocked those down or some of them. And I think that's what you know. Grant even said after the game, he's like, we knocked down just a couple of those. Look how different the game is, or how different we go to overtime. So I mean, we can give credit to TCU if we want. I don't think they're great. They are a middling team. I think that in some ways this is kind of not necessarily, but the computers aren't necessarily even looking at this as like a bad loss. TCU's been hot lately, and for whatever reason, they have figured out. Credit to them, they figured out a way to win a bunch of close games. I think their average margin of victory in these now 8 conference wins is by like 3 or 4 points. I mean, so they are winning those to their credit. But you know, free throw discrepancy 22-8. Grant would say, we just need to do a better job of not fouling. I might say differently. I see you, Dougie Sermons. I see you,
say, Chris.
I see you, Darren George. I see you. Yeah, I see you. Anyway, I thought some of the I think I've said enough.
No, we've got plenty more time. Please.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm happy to listen.
Some phantom calls,
Well, when you know Doug Sermons is going to be involved, it could get a little dicey.
and
that's not a Texas Tech specific thing.
No, it's not. But
I remember where it's just been poor, as in inconsistent from end to end to whoever's advantage when he and some others, but specifically Sermons is involved. I remember the Oklahoma game. I think it was a year ago, where it seemed like there was like 80% of the game where it was going the wrong direction for Tech as far as the whistle. And it wasn't that they started figuring things out. It was just then all of a sudden they started making bad calls in the other direction. And I'm thinking, these are still not good calls, but at least they're benefiting us now, I guess. You get in that kind of flip-flop where maybe everybody's mad leaving the building. But
I mean,
some frustrating stuff there.
Yeah. So, but that's a storyline in this game is 22 free throw attempts to 8. I mean, and you lose a 3-point game. So you can't not bring that up. And while Grant tried to take the high road and say, hey, we got to do a better job of not fouling, I think he can only say so much.
This is a podcast. They stunk.
The combination where you did, I thought, get worked a little bit and out hustled, and I think you got it corrected, was on the glass, especially on the offensive glass in the first half. I mean, at one point you look up and it was like 9 or 10-1 on the offensive rebounds. That should not happen, and that was largely a credit to like the Ernest Udays and David Punch and guys like that. They were a bit quicker and a bit more energetic and a bit more. And they made a few plays, and as we see, the margins are very thin in some of these games, in a few of these plays here or there. But so that's how we ended up here, and it does theoretically, it probably eliminates you from regular season Big 12 title talk. I mean, mathematically still a chance, but I mean, I'm just trying to keep it real with everybody. So now you're essentially trying to play for seeding and all these things. And we can get into some of the things that TCU schematically did, which I think you're going to continue to see, maybe even as soon as this Saturday and whatnot, the way JT Toppin was defended and some things like that. So,
I did want to get into that with you on Toppin in just a second, but the game that we saw from Darion Williams, probably one of his best individual outings of the season, and coming off of a game in Stillwater, where he had a very light presence in the box score. Of course, you win it by 38, so you're kind of like maybe not paying all that much attention to something like that, and maybe it's not even worth paying attention to. I don't know, but it was kind of an interesting little stretch here, and I sort of wonder what it means to you or what you take away from a day where you blow the opposition out as a team. But I think he made like 2 field goals that day at 5 points or something, and then you come right back around and it's 21 for Darion. I can't quite figure out, I guess, the routine for Williams from week to week, man, because in some ways I like his ability to kind of adapt to any role that the game calls for. Some of that based on what his teammates have going, things like that. But then I also wonder, the other side of it, is it just inconsistency or maybe something that should be more concerning? What do you make of his season thus far, the last 2 ball games? What do you think?
I would lean heavily toward the first point that you made. I think that, in Fort Worth, it's like you're in a game where, okay, they're going to do some things to JT Toppin. They're going to focus on him. It wasn't Elijah Hawkins' best game offensively. Christian Anderson dealt with some foul trouble. JT was in foul trouble, and the game kind of called for Darion to offer up certain things. And I think he answered the bell. He scored, and you needed every bit of it. And Chance McMillan scored. Now, some of the problems is that you didn't have enough from an Overton or a Walton or a Federico again. And finally, JT kind of got going. Elijah maybe didn't quite score as much as you would need to. And again, we're grading on a curve here because you still scored 66 points, and we're like sitting here going, oh man. But I think Darion has a great ability to he's a Swiss Army knife, and that the beautiful thing about it is that he can give you what you are missing, and I think it's kind of fun. Do you need me to be a passer? Do I need to be a scorer? Do you need me to run point? Do you need me to I mean, whatever, be a playmaker. I mean, you define it however you want, but I think last night it called for him to score. And I'm not saying that TCU kind of dared him into that and like kind of picked their poison, but there was a little bit of that, and he's got to be able to answer that challenge, and he accepted it. And I thought pretty darn well.
Yeah, I'd say so. Was looking really good doing it,
Yeah.
and was kind of wondering as the game went on, and Texas Tech would get in an advantageous position, and some of that due to Darion Williams. I'm thinking, all right, are we about to see one of these classic finishes where you just kind of take over, and maybe courtesy of things that Williams is doing, and you don't look back? But again, credit to the Frogs for keeping Tech from doing that. As for JT Toppin, statistically, it was not a light day. I mean, you have another double-double. That's not a light day. Now, it wasn't 41 or 32. I suppose I had to tell myself there were going to be days where he didn't score 41 or 32 coming up, so that's fine. But I was curious what you saw them doing defensively for JT, and maybe what you're anticipating as we continue to move through the rest of the regular season. First, today's episode brought to you by TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. And while they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed. And while you go about your day, it's all happening with no stressing, no worrying, and no waiting. Now, this is Taxes with Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Curious what you saw them doing defensively for JT, and maybe what you're anticipating as we continue to move through the rest of the regular season.
I saw them foul him on the very last shot attempt at the end of regulation. That's what they did defensively. But
okay, the most recent memory. Yep.
yeah. Was that okay? I'll answer the question. But did I? What did you? And I mean, if I'm wrong there, tell me I'm wrong. But what did you see?
I saw the same thing, and I
know
I guess
that
these things can be mutually exclusive, but I was also not happy with the decision from JT. I guess
probably should have
correlate, but
yeah, probably should have passed it. However, I think there's contact / not ability to land in the shooting. I mean, there's some things, and I at times
there's some things in there. There's some things.
Yeah. They're not going to necessarily make a call at that time. Does he step up and make all three to tie it? I don't know if there's a foul call, but yeah, that's just that's poor form. So as far as is one, I would say that this was not his best game. He dealt with foul trouble quite a bit, and those have been typically games where he kind of will fade and not be a heavy factor. I think this speaks to how good this kid is, that we're sitting here and he went for 14 and 11, and we're like kind of going, man, you know what I mean? I mean, that tells you how good somebody is. He was 5 of 9 from the field.
Right.
He was credited 0 for 2 from the 3-point line. One of those was a contested shot at the very end. And maybe he just didn't think, I don't have enough time to actually pass it and them get a shot off. He did, but maybe he doesn't know that at the time. And we forget he's still a true sophomore.
Well, sure. And I'm sitting here in the cheap seats. Very easy.
Oh, yeah.
To make the right play from the couch last night.
Yeah, I thought he got bumped, and that's unfortunate. But again, some of that, it's just hard to.
I wonder, going back to what you were touching on a moment ago, is he the kind of? I think sometimes maybe you view a front court guy who's getting buckets around the rim often. I don't know if, at least just speaking for myself, I don't know if sometimes I view them so much as like rhythm players or rhythm offensive guys. Whereas I think about a shooter, like, man, he's got to knock some down early on. He's got to get in a rhythm for him to really have that kind of game. But is JT maybe someone that is also kind of in that category? Maybe everybody is, and I'm just off here. But does he really have that early rhythm to get going?
I think when that first one, like he kind of he forced a three early on in the game, and you could tell, I want to get involved. I want to touch share the sugar. I want to touch that pill, man. It's like I need to. It brings me life.
Hey, he's been pouring a lot of sugar. I get
it. Yeah, and he got it. He's like, okay, now that I'm touching said pill, I'm going to launch it. And from and he did, and he missed. But then the other game around the hoop, it started to play, caught an alley-oop. He banked one in, and then he gets the free throw line a little bit. And then he started to he's like anybody else from that standpoint. Yeah. I would absolutely agree. The double teams will continue. There was some double and triple. It's basically like they picked their poison, and I think too often you couldn't make them pay, and you've got to hit these shots. Overton missed some. Elijah missed some. Kerwin Walton missed some, but that double is coming, and it's the old hockey assist is the way this should work for Texas Tech. Is he, okay, where's it coming from? Let me sniff it out. Let me find the open guy, and then it's the next pass that should be the open three, and you finish 9 of 25, not terrible, but 36%, but I think in previous games, there's another make or two in there, and that's, so guess what? Teams are going to continue to kind of mix this in or major in it until, you show up one night and you make 16 of them like you did in Stillwater. And then they'll go, okay, we can't do this anymore. Let's change it up. And let's just go, man to man down there. But this is what people are going to do to you, and you're kind of showing people blueprints and things like that. But this is, to some of these guys, I mean, I would continue to give them these open looks and go, dude, I mean, I'll take that. I mean, like Overton in the corner, Kerwin Walton in the corner, Elijah, and these have been shots that they've been able to make, but this is what they were doing. And occasionally sending a third or kind of flashing a third guy to try to get him to turn it over, because JT was credited with just the one turnover, but there was a few almost turnovers, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, really, some of the passing for Tech, unfortunately, it's going to be lost in a loss. But some of the passing for Tech, I was blown away by. I think Darion Williams had a few of those looks. Of course, Elijah Hawkins does his typical thing as well. But that was one of those games where I was thinking, man, they're making this look really smooth at a couple of different times as well. So obviously when you lose a game, you feel like everything stinks, but there were various moments where the Red Raiders were looking like the team that we know they are. And I thought, as I already said on this episode, they're going to have a chance to really take over and finish it the right way. But unfortunately, did not happen. And it's just another one of those games that kind of, to me, is it just represents this team in a way that's kind of hard to figure, Chris, because there are plenty of moments where I'm thinking, man, these guys are March ready, built for March. I'm liking it. We've talked about this, why do people like you as far as the odds in March are concerned? And then you get away from a game like this, and I'm thinking, we played like 5.5 guys. Like, we've got contributions from a very small group as far as compared to what some others are going to be packing when it comes to, bench input and things like that. And that's not even like taking into account, Christian Anderson being limited. I'm thinking about him, even though he was somewhat limited foul trouble wise. I'm thinking about him, in a full-fledged effort, but it's kind of scary, isn't it?
Like, scary as in how thin the margins are? Or
yes.
Yeah.
How quickly you can look like a really thin team.
Very true. And yet I would also say to you, part of what I took away from it was, because I think you would agree with me here, and I bet most of the guys on the team would say, man, we'd have a hard time playing any worse than what we kind of strung together for different spurts of that, like big time scoring droughts, getting out hustle, just stuff that we haven't seen. The uncharacteristic turnovers where you got guys kind of pointing at each other, like some miscommunication, and yet you lose by 3 on the road. That's what else I have to remember is like this was about as bad as I'd seen them maybe collectively together in a month or so, and yet you lose by 3 on the road with a shot to tie it at the buzzer, and like, so that I'm like thinking like, well, damn. I mean, and again, this really hot TCU team that wins these close games, and and they're tens of hundreds storming the old court there. By the way, the folks that run the game operations with TCU, because Texas Tech gets criticized for this when it happens there, so it's only fair to share that. But I was a bit. Jeff Axton and I were calling this out as it was happening. Was a bit nervous for guys like Chance McMillan and Kerwin Walton, who you got people jumping the deal, and you got way too many students around your players, and these are when bad things happen. So they held up a rope to try to, but they did not. There's not a lot of security down there. So luckily, Texas Tech's got a bunch of good kids that weren't drawn off sides or whatever, because there's other programs led by other coaches out there and we've seen some of them that would have been like, I'm about to give me a lick in here. Yeah, that was unfortunate, but just kind of
we're firing shots in all directions today.
It was just kind of piling on. Yeah.
Event staff, get it together.
Well, I mean, it's just like, and I don't know if they still set fines up, but they were, the other cute thing that they did was they were playing the Swag Surf song. I think they were trying to take a shot at you, with their, yeah, exactly. I know. I will tell you too, we had said as much about about this particular game. There's plenty of Tech faithful sprinkled in there. I know some of them had to pay more than they probably preferred to get it. I hate that they did not see a win. I talked to, John Sellers and Cody Campbell had a big day recently with some news that was out there, and I saw John in the concourse, and I was talking to him, and I said, "Hey man," this is a halftime, and he goes, "Dude, what's happening?" I was like, "Dude, we're doing stuff tonight that we hadn't done in a month," and he's like, "Why does it always have to happen here?" And I was like, "Well." And this is part I was going to bring up is like, you don't ever sneak up on TCU. I can kind of suggest not rivalry or that they're worried about Baylor. No, they always give you their best. Football, basketball, part of it is your fan base, and it creates a different environment. It's never sleepy. Last night they had the big celebration with Desmond Bain, who is my understanding, he kind of took over the old telecast. And I'm sure, 4-year player, got a second contract in the NBA and all that. But it's like, I don't, the criteria for retiring jersey numbers is interesting at different places. But I digress. To fire off another shot. And I'm not trying to, I'm just stating the way I feel about it. So we'll just spin the wheel on the shot taking here. Anyways.
I love it.
I like this sidebar there. Yeah, I was just like, well, this is a lot of red carpet. I mean, did they win any championships or any NCAA tournaments or anything going on whatsoever on any of it? Okay, I digress. I need to get back on track. Okay, so we're going to swerve back in the middle of the road. A lot of Tech folks there. I saw so many folks that watched this show and came up to me, found us over in the up the top of the corner. And just made it a point to speak and talk about, watching us on Locked On. And I can't thank you enough. Our man, Mason Tharp, shout out. And Mr. Tharp, I think he's a viewer as well. Training, saw him, Matt Temple. So it's like I found the two tallest guys in the building, and I'm pretty tall myself. I'm like 6'5", 6'6", and like both of these dudes I'm looking way up to. And they were the two of the tallest guys, I guess, in the arena. Mace and Matt Temple, former hooper and former footballer there. So, anyways, just to contextualize a bit, it was a frustrating night, but I appreciate your fan base. I still love your team. You will bounce back. I can't wait for this 2-game home stretch. You do need to, I just a little look behind the curtain. We got back. Because of the weather in the Metroplex, you and I are sitting here talking like morning of Wednesday here. So the game was last night, and I've been home about 4 or 5 hours because of just travel issues. Your team needs some chill time. They need some time to hit the energize button again and kind of try to get their legs back under them and decompress a little bit. So West Virginia will be here before you know it, and then oh boy, don't we know what'll be here on Monday night with a lot of pomp and circumstance on that night. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I feel like in some ways the pressure is off. You're not in this like, okay, we gotta, you're just kind of now playing for seeding, playing for geography and the tournament and all these things. So screw it, man. Let's go have some fun. But I'm ready for some Mountaineers to come my way because I'd like a piece of that country road action right there. So bring it on.
Mission remains the same as the mission was before the game. Keep winning. And so hopefully we'll do that next time you're back on the floor. And just a final shot there at Fort Worth air travel. That sucks too. Just want to make sure that resonated with everyone. Chris, before we get out of here, I did want to touch on this for just a moment because we're going to get into it on an upcoming episode, a conversation that's really taken off as far as the college football playoff and its postseason expanding in years to come and all that could be involved there. Obviously, how that impacts the Big 12 and Texas Tech, we'll dive into on an episode this week. But somewhat adjacent to that has been a conversation running pertaining to the NCAA basketball postseason, which just seems to basically translate to a conversation running pertaining to the NCAA basketball postseason, which just seems to basically translate to more equals more. You're getting it. It's good for you. Get ready. I guess. Do I have that right? Or what are you thinking? Because I think it was Seth Davis there were a couple of articles I saw in recent days that were getting some attention about not only happening, but why it needs to happen. I know there's a variety of opinion out there among fans, but what are you thinking, man? Are we cruising toward this as well?
Well, okay, so this is typically the way this happens, and as you mentioned, we will spill over into a different sport along these conversations in our next episode. But this has been now 2 to 4 times that this has really been heavily floated. It's getting to it's going to expand. Okay, so this is just the way it works. When it's suggested, it's floated. There's discussion. And then it keeps happening. Guess what? You need to be prepared for. And again, this is not going to be some major change. I think if you were expanding to like 96, I think that the tournament purists are against this. I think there's a lot of you're going to dilute it. You don't need to do this. Who wants this? I tell you, who may want it is somebody like Brett Yormark. I think Brett Yormark is actually kind of pushed for some of this chatter to get more access to more of his teams, because whenever he first was talking about this, it was operating from a position of strength. Like, we have a really good basketball league. If I can get more access to more of my teams, that equals more money and all the stuff. What it ultimately will mean, and they're talking going from 68 to 72 or 68 to 76, and that would be more Tuesday, Wednesday games before what I guess I always determine, before I say the real tournament starts. This is more like Dayton, Ohio action. Yeah. These are more like play-in games because you're working against the calendar like football, and then you're so these are almost like, I guess we'll consider these as tournament games, but you're almost like, hey, we're going to put 2 10 seeds, 2 11 seeds, 2 12 seeds, and you're playing your way into the bracket kind of scenario. Look, for somebody like TCU that you just lost to, they're probably going to love this talk. They would probably benefit greatly this particular year based on these conversations. In this particular year for you, you're a far cry from you that really mattering to you at all. But I think this is going to happen, and it's not. This would be something for a year from now, and I do think that you'll get this change, and it will be another site like Dayton that will host, I guess maybe on the West Coast, or maybe Midwest. I don't know, but it'd be Dayton, and then that you're going to send a whole bunch of teams, and we'll get day sports out of it. We'll get meaningful basketball out of it, and it could benefit Texas Tech at some point down the line. Sure. I don't know, and so, but nobody getting sent there is going to win the national championship. And I just think there's some folks that are saying, man, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not broken. Who's asking for this? And maybe there's some more money there and all that stuff. But But either way, this is going to happen in some form or fashion. So,
all right, mark those words. Challenge issued by Chris Level to anybody in these play-in games. You're not winning the national championship. We'll circle back if that ever needs to be amended, maybe down the road. All right, man. Appreciate the time and insights as always, Chris. Enjoyed it as always as well. And as I mentioned, we'll keep talking expansion on an upcoming episode this week because we got to get into what's being reported in the land of college football as it relates to the Big Ten, the SEC, and of course the rest of the world, which I think we're still allowed to live in, but I'll have to check on that between now and the next conversation. Looking forward to it, and we'll see you then.
Yeah, sounds good. Go get some sleep. I'm going to try to, people, although it's daytime when you may be watching this. But, man, yeah, I hate the color purple. I'm ready to be back at home for a bit. And, yeah, I've exhausted all knowledge of said game in Fort Worth. And
you're frogged out.
Yeah, absolutely. I am. So, anyway, guns up, man.
You're a brave man. Thank you for your service. Somebody's got to do it. Chris is the one to step up to the plate. Yeah. All right. Appreciate you guys for being out there. As always, get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the everydayers, and shout out to the Matador Mob. Hit the show notes to find a link there for a free 14-day trial. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks as always for the time, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.